Ann Brown, editor-in-chief of Harlem World Magazine, and I'd like to welcome you all here today for the HWM A.C.E. Summit in celebration of the 400th anniversary of New York City's founding. It is an honor to hold this event at the Schomburg Center, a beacon of Harlem's intellectual legacy. Thank you for the community leaders and the partners such as Inez Dickens, Boza Rivers, the Harlem Writers Guild, the Harlem Cultural Archives for joining us this evening. Also, thank you to Tisdale Studio, Marble Nobles, Rhythm and Soul Radio, and Enjoy Enterprises for helping make this year's summit possible. Excuse me. Harlem World is continuing its 2-decade mission of celebrating Harlem's voices and inspiring positive change through storytelling. And it is for this reason we selected the theme of ACE, A.C.E., for this year's summit. ACE stands for Art, Climate, and Education. When it comes to art, Harlem's unapologetic spirit and cultural brilliance can be seen in its murals, poetry, and performance. For climate, the community's action through organizations like We Act, reflect Harlem's leadership in environmental justice. In the educational space, literacy and continued storytelling against forces of erasure symbolize Harlem's resilience and voice. Our panel discussion tonight will reflect these topics. Harlem World's executive editor, Eartha Watts Hicks, will moderate.
Thank you. Hello, Harlem. Hello.
Today's panelists include artist, educator, and historian, Dr. David Byer Tyre. Environmental justice advocate, Peggy Shepard. And educator, Veronica Holly. Following our panel discussion, we invite everyone to take part of a Q&A hosted by Harlem World Magazine's own Joe Green. And he's back there in the hat. Again, welcome to the 2025 Harlem World Magazine's ACE Summit, where history meets the future in Harlem. Enjoy.
Thank you. So I'll open with some background on our esteemed guest today, this evening. Ms. Peggy Shepard is the co-founder and executive director of We Act for Environmental Justice. She's a pioneering advocate for environmental health and equity in urban communities. With decades of grassroots organizing in northern Manhattan, Peggy has led national campaigns like policy, research, and community action. She has served as the first chair of the White House Environmental Justice Advisory, as well as the EPA's National Justice Advisory Council, and she also chairs New York City's Advisory Board. Dr. David Byer Tyre believes art is an essential tool for affirming the truth of those often overlooked. He's an artist, educator, and historian whose work focuses on integrating African American cultural interests in diverse community settings. He's the administrative coordinator of Plaza Gallery at Nassau Community College and director of programming at Mentor Network. Let's give it up for Dr. David Byer Tyre. Ms. Veronica Holly is a dynamic, seasoned leader with more than 30 years of experience in higher education, administration, research, educational program development, and schools community partnership building. In the early 1990s, she served as the assistant to Governor Mario Cuomo's Advisory Committee for Black Affairs. Let's give it up for Ms. Veronica Holly. Let's start with our first question for Ms. Veronica Holly. What role should community organizations play in closing the achievement gap for Black and brown students?
Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. Like I said, to be a part of this event is very meaningful to me, and to sit with some folks that I really admire and have looked up to, especially Miss Peggy Shepard, for such a long time. It's such a wonderful honor.
And now, Ms. Shepard, concerning the achievement gap and the disproportionate effect that the environment in Harlem has on students and their learning capacity, physical and mental health, what can we do as a community to build support around ensuring that these disparities are addressed?
Yeah, well, good evening, everyone. So we're really talking about community organizing. We're really talking about reaching out to health practitioners. And one thing I was able to do early on, I was on the advisory board for Harlem Hospital, and I met a doctor there named Dr. Jean Ford, who was a pulmonary medicine physician. And I remember being on the board, we were talking about the beginnings of the asthma epidemic. And, you know, I was talking to him about the disproportionate impact of pollution in communities of color around the country, and of course, affecting children the most. He gave me a call one day, very excited, and said, my God, I've just done a study and I found out that children in Harlem have 3 times the rate of asthma as children in New York City. And of course, then we had to set out to find out why. And of course, air pollution is a big issue. Maybe you all didn't know that of the 7 bus depots in Manhattan, guess what? 6 of them are uptown. And these were all old, decrepit. They were small, so the buses were idling outside the depot because they couldn't get inside. And so all of that, you know, impact was going into our communities. Now, we were able, through George Pataki, to get him to purchase 300 natural gas buses. We then filed a Title VI lawsuit, civil rights lawsuit against the MTA. And now if you're at a bus station, you'll see a flyer that says Title VI. You can actually apply for that. And again, we're the only ones who ever did that. And you'll now see that every bus says hybrid. Well, that took years of organizing to make that happen. And Denny Farrell was very helpful with the depot across Esplanade Gardens. So again, community organizing, the education of communities to understand the impact, to understand why they are having certain public health impacts. And I think that becomes very important. We're able to have monthly membership meetings. Some of our members are here, 2 or 3 I've seen. And it's really important that our members understand the issue because they're the ones who promote it to their families and to their neighbors. So again, what we've got to do is ensure that we are organized, educated, and we're pushing our elected officials. Because, you know, I was a Democratic district leader in West Harlem, and I think some of the traditional politicians weren't too happy about me running over there, and they thought environment, what the hell is that? You know, that has nothing to do with our folks, right? And of course, we find out that the disproportionate effect of pollution is on our communities and on the health of our children. And so again, we've got to educate ourselves, but we've got to push our elected officials. We got to go to the community board. We have to go to the city council. And, you know, we can promote really strong legislation, and we've been able to do that. Whether it's, you know, heating and cooling centers, whether it's, you know, outlawing mercury in skin lighteners, formaldehyde in braids and hair extensions, ladies. And some of our gentlemen with the braids, we're looking at that as well. We have a beauty justice campaign. Again, because not all of us understand that we are impacted by chemicals, air quality, water quality, solid waste, and of course now climate. And climate change impacting so many communities. So those are, organizing's gotta be, organizing in education has to be the base.
Thank you. Now, Dr. David Byer Tyre, some of these disparities concerning art and education, can you tell us what some of these disparities look like when it comes to communities of color, Black and brown students?
I think that I would be remiss to think about how art affirms the condition of Black people in whatever the context. But to talk about only about disparities, be it education, or environmental issues or climate change. I think that there's a greater issue that happens within our community that we have a responsibility to address, and that's really just empowering both students and community members who want to express themselves in a public forum. I think that it's too easy to allow other people to create an African American narrative, visual imagery of us, to replicate our history and reappropriate it in ways that doesn't necessarily affect our interests. I think to ask a young person to create something without a historical context or without an understanding, reiterates the concerns of both of these beautiful women. And I would say lastly, that if I was to talk about art as a generic, reproduction of some type of emotional, social, economic, or environmental state of being, that it would have little relevance if we don't first acknowledge what does it mean to empower a young person. What does it mean to talk about education in a way that it affirms both the responsibility of those who teach them as well as the environment that nurtures them. What does it mean to be sick and to be an artist? It means absolutely nothing. To be undereducated and to be an artist, it means absolutely nothing. So, in a generic way, I cannot. But to say that both of the things or all of the issues that we are bringing up is important, I would say definitely so. But is art a necessity? Yes. Is community empowerment a necessity? Yes. Is environmental empowerment necessary? Yes. Education and support from family and community important? Yes. Now we need to think about how we're going to create art to make everyone else understand its importance.
I think for me, the one thing I want to make certain is clear tonight is that schools can't do it alone. Schools will not do it alone, right? And we need to lean on the community organizations, the nonprofits that have been doing this work. They need to be funded. They need to be supported. And they need to have the ability to do a lot of the work that many schools are asking them to do. In order, I believe, to get these curriculum into the hands of children, we might need to rely on community organizations and other institutions to do the work. That's not to say that parents and families shouldn't be doing the work themselves, but I'm not convinced that the commitment will be there wholeheartedly from any school district to teach Black history. So from my standpoint, from my experience working in communities with community organizations, many of you guys who are doing this work, right? I've seen your passion. I've seen your commitment to certain curriculum, to certain topical areas. I think the answer is there. I think it's great if we can get our Black studies curriculums and things like that and African American studies curriculums into schools. I think it's absolutely wonderful. But I'm not convinced that the staying power will be there, and I think we must rely on other community members to do the work as well. They need to be funded, they need to be supported. So I think that's number one.
Thank you.
impacted by climate change. Climate change means it's going to be hotter in some places, it's going to be colder in some places, it's going to affect sea level rise. So there are many ways all of us are going to be impacted. But when we're talking about education, and you talked about the reliance on community-based organizations, that becomes really important. You know, when we started out and had our first office at 125th and St. Nicholas, we had a group called the Earth Crew. And it was a group of young teenagers. And the first project we gave them was to map from 125th to 145th Street, to walk it and to take note of every polluting facility, every kind of store, the impact of the sidewalks, trash, all of those things. And it not only gave them a wonderful project that was important and gave us information that we didn't have, but they began to learn what some of the impacts are in our neighborhoods. Now, when I look out over this audience, most of us are not going to be here in 10, 15, or 20 years, but our kids are. And we've got to get them prepared, because climate change will worsen. We already have a president and an administration that fired half of the darn EPA. Fired and killed the whole environmental justice office, firing people right and left. So that means the people who are thinking about our future and about our kids are the people that are getting fired. So we got 3 more years of this. But, you know, I was looking at something on TV the other day, and the person was saying, you know, to get things back, to get back to where you were, could take 10 or 20 years. Now, I don't want to believe that, because I won't be here in that amount of time. So I know that we have got to get prepared right now, so that in 3 years, we are ready to get our money back from the federal government, because they took $3 million in grants from us, in contracts that we had signed. And one of those grants was $3 million to do outreach citywide for the New York City Environmental Justice Plan. Now, some of you may not be aware, but we were able to move 2 pieces of legislation through the City Council. One created the mandate for the city to do a report by borough on environmental issues, and the second piece of legislation required a plan. So we were getting $3 million from the EPA to do a charrette process all over the city to help residents create the plan to address the problems that the city found. And of course, they took that. So we'll do it, but you know, we always have to do organizing on the cheap, unfortunately, you know. And so I just want to say that we've got to look to our young people. There's a program called BioBus. That works with young people. We've worked with them. We need more projects like that. We need more teachers reaching out, as you said, to community-based organizations, because all of us can use interns, we can use youth enthusiasm and their energy to really begin to do some of the things that we need to do in our community and to keep them informed as well.
Dr. David Byer Tyre, what can parents do if and when the arts programming at their local school where their children attend is inadequate or in need of certain programming, whether it's music or visual art? What can parents do to either supplement or start where they are and build from the institution or school that their children are a part of?
I don't think that's a question that I would put on parents. You know, again, I think it goes back to what you said, you know, about having organizations in place to, you know, address those issues. And I, again, think to talk about art, again, as a response to something rather than an expression of something, is always, you know, somewhat of a daunting place to address it. If a kid has an interest in something, we're in New York, we're in the art capital of the world. You know, it is unfortunate that the artistic expression doesn't always, fall in line with our cultural or ethnic identities. But there's always a place in New York in which you can find art. I think, dealing with NYSCA, New York State Arts, Foundation for the Arts, looking again at local organizations and institutions, many of them which, create arts programs. And if you want to get parents involved to make sure that the cultural aspects and social aspects reflect, the community that you come from. But I think one of the things that even parents, kind of fail to do, in addressing arts or looking at art in general, is asking a young person what brings them joy. What makes you happy? Where do you see, art taking you, or how does this expression make a better you? The conversations, that art provokes is often conversations we don't even have. Some of the issues that are being addressed and some of, the things that are being expressed, within our neighborhoods, and how, like I said, how art is used to create a shadow of who we are versus a legitimate image of, who we are and what we stand for, I think is a bigger problem. Going into, I'm not going to call the shopping center out by name, but going into many of the shopping centers in Harlem and seeing graffiti on the walls to represent African American culture. Not saying that graffiti is not a great art form, but why always? Having a mural, plastered in every community. When you go into affluent communities, you don't see murals. You see great plantings. You see trees. You see social settings. You see gazebos. You see parks. You see things that even statues that affirm significant individuals that contributed to the development of those particular communities. Again, that's art. Thinking about art as just solely an individual expression or a space in which someone can discover themselves, I think is short-sighted. And that's the reason why many of our art forms are co-opted by other cultures. I had to judge a graffiti contest in Hong Kong. The best breakdancers right now are coming out of Japan. What are you laughing about? It's real.
Yes.
When we talk about, what does our culture look like, we have, AI models that often pick up on African American popular culture, and it's immediately creating something, for us to ingest. And when it doesn't represent us positively, we digest it, and if it's hot, we replicate it. Yeah. and none of that really speaks to who we are. If we're talking about music, dance, visual arts, fine arts, all of those things, especially for people of color, is becoming, an important investment in making sure that it's authentic, that is, the truth. Because if we don't, invest in securing these things and making sure that value and confirmation of their legitimacy comes out of our community, other communities will make it very much a representation of you. We've dealt with this from blackface minstrelsy to good times. So, I'm thinking more of the Jefferson model. I know I'm old, but I'm moving on.
Ms. Holly, how can schools better prepare students for what's ahead in the landscape, especially concerning AI and different emerging technologies?
I think we need to recognize that education is changing. It's not just schools though, it's schools and parents. Folks need to understand, we all need to understand that the education landscape is changing. Today, these career skill certificates and apprenticeship programs are really the direction for which many students should go. Because once you complete those, you can get employment. So that's a complete departure, right? A complete departure from how we came up, right? Where you had to get your BA, you had to get your associates, you had to get your degrees. Now it's a whole different, set of career skill certifications that folks are looking at. So I think we need to, as adults, as parents, as caregivers, I think we need to recognize that landscape has changed. And to encourage our students not only to apply to the four-year schools, but also to apply to all these, different types of certificate AI programs or apprenticeship programs. I was in the bank not too long ago. I was talking to one of the bankers there, and a young guy, and he said, we were talking about school, and he said, me and my friends have this saying, we say, 4 degrees with no fees. And I was like, whoa, that's cool, I'm gonna use that. I said, can I use that? Young guy, in his early 20s, he's recognized at an early age that taking on additional debt is not his way out. Up and out. I think we need to recognize that part of what we need to do is shift our understanding of what educational attainment looks like, of what lifelong learning looks like, and of how we're going to attain these certificates, these degrees, these qualifications to do the work we need to do. I think that's very, very important, especially for those folks of us who are in the sandwich generation, right, who are taking care of elders and also taking care of children. We might not realize that the education landscape has shifted. A lot of kids now, the big thing now are these career certificates, right? You can go on, you can get a certificate in a skill that you could actually get hired for, right? As opposed to going to a 4-year college and having a huge debt. And so I think we need to recognize that, a lot of the adults in the room, and encourage our young people to do that, also go after scholarships and go after other things as well. But one of the major things I've learned after being in higher ed for so long, and I've seen so many people, I don't want to point any of them out in the room, who incurred such a huge debt in this quest to become a PhD or to have advanced degrees. And they're doing this in education, right? And they're doing this in social work.
That will never pay them back.
That will never pay them back. At the end of the year, like bonuses or anything like that. You know what I mean? Coming out of B school or something. So I'm like, that part hurts so much for me. That was a really hard thing to watch. So many young people, as they aspire for their dream, to take on so much debt. And so one of the things I think that's really important for parents to recognize is that, yes, our traditional means of education, going to a 4-year college, all these things are very, very important. I'm not taking that away at all. I think that's very important, it's paramount. But it's also important to recognize that there are other pathways for young people today to receive some type of skill, right, certification, in their career. So I think that's important for the adults in the room to recognize. Yeah, I don't know.
Ms. Shepard, can you please offer us some insight into some of the projects you have currently going on right now?
Yeah, and I'll start with an older one. I worked with a teacher at a school called Wheels, and we began working with them by giving talks in the school to the students, and the teacher began to develop expos for the students to come and make presentations on environmental issues that they discovered in their neighborhood or community. And this went on for about 4 years.
Wow.
And those students are now almost ready to graduate from high school and go to college, and many of them are pursuing that kind of environmental education. As a result, we've been able to begin to develop an environmental education center. We bought a brownstone across from City College a million years ago for $1 when the city owned everything. And we finally have raised enough money to begin the renovation. And so we will have a 5-story building for environmental education to begin to bring students there, to begin to convene folks doing this work all over the country, to be a strong hub for this movement, because environmental justice is a strong national and international movement. And I would also say that, we're across the street from City College, which also has a high school on its campus. So again, reaching out to those teachers, and teachers do have an important role.
Absolutely.
Another way students can be involved is internships. We definitely use student interns, and believe me, that is a very important experience for so many students.
Yes.
To be able to come into a working organization, to begin to understand what it's like to go to work, to work with people around research. A lot of our students, of course, really know online research. So again, all of our organizations need that kind of online work. So the internships, the fellowships become very, very important. And we're able to find funding to fund those. So it's not just asking them to come for free. So I think the educational piece is very important. I live around the corner from the Children's Art Carnival. Again, Mary developed, that must be almost 40 years old at this point. And again, they have a full complement of education for young people to come and express themselves through art. So again, we have to get a little more creative. We have to work together more and collaborate, because some of us have some funding, some of us don't, but some of us have great ideas, some of us have other access to people or others who can really be helpful. And so the collaboration becomes very, very important.
Dr. David Byer Tyre, can you please elaborate on some of the projects and some of the work that you're currently doing? And if there's a piece of advice that you would share for an up-and-coming artist about their art, something that they should keep in mind as an artist and visionary, please share.
I actually have an exhibit going on in my hometown in New Bern, North Carolina. This is my 35th high school class reunion. And I find it interesting, when you go back to a small town, how people imagine you and how people actually end up sometimes meeting those expectations, often not. But you kind of reminisce on, what you said you were going to do, how we are able to connect. But going back to this town, I can say that this wasn't the same town that I grew up in many ways. And a lot of my artwork deals with race and representation. It deals with stereotypes and the commodification of blackness in American popular culture. And to go in and put in I think one of my pieces was an elephant head with racism on the top of it and instructions on how to put it on. The idea of the elephant in the room being racism. Or a Kermit the Frog in a glass jar with bullets around it. And the title of the piece is, and you thought it wasn't easy being green. Try being a brown Kermit the Frog, But all of those things were well received. They understood what the context was as an African American growing up, in supposedly a liberal town in eastern North Carolina. My hometown has 14 country clubs and 2 public housing projects. It was the capital of the Carolinas before Carolina was broken up into Tennessee, North Carolina, and South Carolina. And my family was the first group of slaves brought to the Carolinas to grow rice. So part of my family is Gullah, the other part of my family is Lumbee Indian. So to come from 2 suppressed, groups of people, and now to like go back and actually see that, we celebrate John Canute. Never would they celebrate John Canute. That's something we did in our backyard, people, and hope that the white people didn't think we were performing witchcraft. But many of these things have now been embraced as a cultural importance. So showing in my hometown, I would say that's one of the things that I'm very proud of, and the reception of it. A more immediate project that I'm working on, I just finished building a 1974 race car, which is actually an art car. It's a Ford Capri. The car is actually originated in South Africa during the height of apartheid. And as a black person or a person of African descent, I would have never been able to buy that car. But I bought it. And I looked up all the information that I could possibly look up on a gentleman called Leonard Miller, who created the African American Automobile Association in 1974. And I redesigned this car to represent what a black man would have done with that car in 1970. But to take it to another level, it's called the race car because the car is detailed with issues of race. So instead of the STP sign for oil, it has STOP, hurting brown people. The project was in collaboration with Patterson School District. Students came up with all of the decals to go on the car. And on the title of the car, it actually says, let's see, it deals with wokeness. Let me see, I forgot. On the title, well, actually, I know. So the title of it deals with woke AI. And most people, when they look at it from a distance, look at it and they see like a fingerprint, like a OK symbol with an eyeball in the middle. And it reads OK AI. And the actual wording is, it's okay, we're all immigrants. So I'm using AI to represent all of us. But making sure that the artwork speaks again to someone's intention, making sure our community is visually literate, that they understand how to align, artistic medium to the message. That's what I would encourage any aspiring artist to do. Understand what you're working with, make sure you're clear in your objective, and understand that whatever you're putting out into the public sphere is affecting someone in some way. And you don't have to be responsible for that, but understand, your intentions so that you can, if questioned.
Thank you. Thank you so much. To piggyback on your question, can you please elaborate for those of us who don't know what woke AI is? Can you please elaborate?
Okay, so actually this is a huge part of what I'm working on now for a lot of different organizations. There is an intentional, actually there's several organizations and algorithms that are being created in databases to suppress African American history and culture. In fact, the White House just put out an announcement that if you do not show where you are pushing away from woke AI or AI dealing with cultural issues.
Entrepreneur, Harlem Youth Publishing and Entrepreneurial Program, which will introduce young people to journalism and the like. But I think what's really, really important is to try and get young people to think critically about the media that they are consuming. I think behind that, though, piggybacking on what you're saying, is that one of the things we're going to try to do with HWM is to increase the storytelling And I encourage all of us in this room to increase our storytelling of our own stories, our own truths, our own facts that are true. The storytelling part that is authentic, that comes from the community, that comes from individuals, that comes from families, needs to be created.
Yes.
And we have to create that storytelling. I'm piggybacking on what you're saying because I'm quite certain other folks have seen it. Some type of mashup of hip hop in the 80s.
Yes.
Cute.
I know exactly what you're talking
You know what I'm
about.
talking about? There's an AI out there, there's a mashup of hip hop in the 80s. And so you have some young people with sheepskins on and, you know, all the 80s dress. But for those of us who experience, who were in it,
That's what I'm saying.
who experienced it,
Yeah.
it's not authentic.
At all.
At all. And I'm not a true artist, right?
Yeah.
I play it, right? But I'm not a true artist. And I say to myself, you know, what's needed here is our storytelling. And to truly piggyback on what you're saying, not only do we need to tell our own stories, we need to find ways to archive our own stories.
Yes.
And promote our own stories.
And I think that that's where the Schomburg plays
Yes.
a critical part.
Oh, absolutely.
In this, we need real people that can say this is the truth,
Right.
that they can believe that and go to places where they can find it.
Right.
So yes.
Yeah. So that's important to me. And like I said, you know, for young people and adults to be critical of what they're consuming
Yeah.
is absolutely essential.
And it's entertaining, but it's not true.
It's not, it's entertaining. It's fun. Let's look at it. But on that same token, when you flip it, you have to be able to tell your own stories. And I do employ all of us. We're going into the holiday season as we, you know, connect with family, as you connect with friends. Ask a question, record that question, save that question. Find ways to record your own truth. That's what we're gonna do with HYPE, I hope, which is, like I said, get young people to think critically, introduce them to this world of journalism, but also to increase the storytelling of our world, right? My vision, I think for the next, I think we talked about maybe 400 years of Harlem, would be to have young people from all walks of life contribute to the storytelling of their current truth, right? How rich would it be to have so many of the middle passive stories from all the immigrant students who are coming today? How rich would it be if we had photos and videos of family practices, of customs, of traditions, of many of our families? I mean, that's really wonderful stuff. But it is on the larger institutions and those of us who know how to archive, to store it, to protect it.
Yes.
But I think as we think about AI, I think we have to continue to learn it, and don't be afraid of it, to utilize it. You know, my organization, we're working now for a group out of the UK that's doing some really funky stuff for neurodivergent children in terms of dissecting and demystifying these huge research papers, you know. And so most folks will say, okay, that, you know, are they, you know, contributing to young people not, you know, writing or reading a full text? But for neurodivergent children who might be on their way to college or in college, maybe they need the assistance. So I think there are a number of AI tools out there that are very supportive, that we need to learn, that the kids need to learn, that adults need to learn, teachers need to learn. But I also think we have to be critical about what we're consuming. We have to question everything that we're consuming. I heard it said a couple of years ago, you know, about this time, they said, everything you consume, you have to question.
Yes.
Whether it's real or not, everything.
I also had a student, you know, to tell me, you know, where you play, I live. and use some music. What does that mean? You know, meaning that, you know, how you go to work, you know, the community you go into, even the spaces that you go into, all of those spaces, they know, you know, nothing about, but it defines their community. You know, it defines who you are, it defines how you look outside of the community, how other people critique you. And when they say, I'm from here, all of that baggage that we create, good or bad, follows that student. You know, and this was a student in Newark. It doesn't necessarily apply to Harlem, but it's something to really think about. You know, when you play, you know, all the things that you're creating for your entertainment or whatever is going on, you know, I have to live here, and especially when the issues and my needs aren't addressed. So I think that that's, you know, something we need to think about. I think that also wraps up the concept of environment. You know, we go into these places and we don't take environmental issues seriously, but our kids have to live in that space. Yeah.
Well, you know, just to make a comment on AI, artificial intelligence, there's a webinar almost every day now. So you all can get informed.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, you don't want an AI facility located in your neighborhood.
No. Yes.
They
Because
use
the back
a tremendous amount of power and water. It's amazing. You don't want one of those facilities in your community. So we've got to think about these, all of these newfangled technologies that can make some of our life better. But as you said, we've got to understand what we are ingesting, what we're putting on our bodies, and really question all of those issues. And so we also have to question, well, if IA is so great, you know, how does it come about? How is it situated? Where will it be? You know, this isn't something out in the ether.
Yeah.
It's going to be in a facility. And, you know, one of the things we've been able to do is to get a cumulative impact siting law in the state. And so right now the state has put out for comment their equitable siting law. And so we're going to be doing statewide community organizing to ensure that communities around the state can impact what that law will actually look like. Because if we don't have equitable siting, we will continue to be the dumping ground. You know, Dr. Robert Bullard wrote books about dumping and Dixie. And read down here about what? Dumping and Dixie. Some of these places are going to be in those areas that have more space. So again, thinking about how these things are cited, not just looking at, you know, the superficiality of new technology. Well, what does that mean? What does that really mean? And what does that mean in our neighborhoods?
Another question for you, Ms. Shepard. How important are Harlem's green spaces and community gardens? And what can Harlem residents do to protect and increase these spaces?
Well, you know, one thing about parks and open space, it's something that everybody understands and that everybody loves. And it's not hard to organize around. Think of all the kids who are playing basketball or whatever in a park. Think of all the folks who are jogging and bicycling. Everybody's on a bicycle or scooter nowadays. And so really being able to organize residents, kids, parents, that's a great school project to ensure that they have enough trees around their school so that they're in a healthy environment. So again, you know, one of our big projects was Riverbank State Park. And, you know, it's on top of the sewage treatment plant, which we sued the city over. And when David Dingetts was mayor, and he committed $55 million in a front page New York Times article to fix that plant. And so we also, as a community benefit, got a park on top. There's ice skating, little black girls doing ice skating in Harlem. Oh my God, you should see them. It's amazing. But the facilities there are quite incredible. And so again, the community, push, the pushback against our city, talking to the New York City Commissioner of Parks, all of that is important. Organize 2 schools to go down to the Commissioner of Parks. Those things aren't so hard. Some of these other issues are a little more, sketchy for some people. They don't quite understand it, but we understand parks and trees and open space. And so that is a good place to start kids and parents organizing to ensure that their kids have a safe, clean place to play and have recreation.
Yes.
What the panel will have us do as a community, collectively, intergenerationally, to report back to Harlem World, or to Hype, or to We Act. We have to go from articulation Thursday night to action at least 1 week out from tonight. That's my question. What will you in leadership have us do to go from the words articulation into action?
Sure. Well, again, as an artist and having to often interject into spaces that, like I said, that often pretend to represent us, but not necessarily represent us in an authentic way. I mean, this is just the perfect season. This is the beginning of the season for giving, as one says. And as well as, the season in which we take a deep look at our harvest. What have we collected? That being said, we see tons of gentrification, throughout Harlem. I would say something that you could take back immediately into this community is to go to every store that sells you something that's going to put up a Christmas window or some type of display for the season and request that they put up something that represents whatever the cultural, social, or community interest of Harlem is, and put a bow on it, so that the community's not forgotten, so that they can connect themselves, to again the growth and prosperity that they truly want to display during the holiday season, and get together with a group of kids and have them to play a role in creating that thing that best represents us. Easy project. We're talking about these subjects, places that sell books should talk about education. Places that are selling everything should be talking about environmental issues. And of course we have places that could very easily express what the arts looks like in Harlem. Give them a choice. You may be surprised, how invested these institutions are in the visions that we just kind of brought forth. How about that?
I think the other thing we can do, and which I hope to do with Hype, is start communicating with one another. And start forwarding and pushing and suggesting certain things for us and for others to read and to consume. I hope to be able to reach out to so many of us, the Harlem community, and start to elicit you to think about what is your story. Because your story most likely falls maybe in education or in the arts or in the environment. Right? We need to begin to recognize in this world of AI that real stories matter, that truth matters, right? Even if it doesn't matter to them, it matters to us.
Hey.
Yes.
And so I think what I would like to see is people begin to organize around, especially for Harlem, around telling the stories, the forgotten, the marginalized stories that are here. I'm so glad you brought up the riverbank State Park, because so many folks don't even know the history of it and how it came to be. But these are stories that are real, and they speak to not only the accomplishment, but the fight, you know, and overcoming. At the time, I remember that. I was a youngster. I was younger. You know, I remember that. But I remember the fight, Ms. Shepard, and I remember that story, and it gave me and so many other people such an inspiration to do what we do. You know, so what I would say is that each one of us in here has a story about Harlem, a story about the Bronx, a story about wherever you're from, okay? Has a story about your grandma,
Yes.
about your grandpa,
Great Black Migration, yes.
your immigrant parents, or your family from South Carolina. We all have these stories. I think what's imperative is that we tell our truth, and that's part of the storyline that's here. I remember listening to a podcast, I forget which one, it was a Harlem World podcast, and I think it was a recent one. We were talking about Lloyd Williams passing, and someone had said they'd like to know more information about Lloyd. I was like, geez, I mean, we should have that. That should be like front and center. All the information should be there for people to consume. And we have to make the time to consume this information that is authentic to ourselves. So that I think is very paramount, and I think we can do that, Dallas, by sharing, by suggesting, hey, you should read this. Not only, you know, forward things to folks, you should read this. I have a girlfriend of mine, she's one of my board president. She said, Veronica, I'm sending this out tomorrow, please. She sent it to me and a number of other folks about Black women today and stress and mental health. She said, please forward this to everyone. That's the type of organizing I think we need to start to do. Small, incremental, just be vigilant, remember to be cognizant, be present, and share this information with one another. And I think that's what we can do.
Something about taking action.
Yes.
So we have membership meetings every month on a Saturday. Chris, is one coming up soon?
November 8th, 10 a.m. I can't remember where, but it's on the website.
Okay, and I can let you all know. But we can all go to the community board, we can all go back to our building and say, we need to have a building-wide meeting. And you know, I see Danny Patterson here. His brother, David Patterson, was one of the Sewage Seven. So the Sewage Seven was a group of us who accessed the West Side Highway, got out on Monday morning, on Martin Luther King Day, and held up traffic and got arrested. We were called the Sewage Seven, and that was another action we took around the sewage treatment plant that was spewing out odors that were making everybody sick. So there's all kinds of actions we can take. We can take safer ones in our buildings with our neighbors, and then we can go out there and really take some action and let people know that, you know, this isn't right what's happening.
And also, I just want to add something that Eartha said. We also have started a section called My Harlem, and we're inviting people from the community to tell their stories and to share what they want people to know about Harlem. And you just visit the website and you'll find a section for you to submit your story, so you can share with others.
We spoke about having the trade and the certificates, but what can we do about, and this is probably more personal because right now my child is trying to go to college, and one of the fights that I'm having right now is her 1 year is my 4 years
Wow.
at my alma mater. And so how do we not kill the dreams of those who want to go to college and want to go more, and with this astronomical pricing of college, what can we do as parents, as educators, as the CBOs to help these rising costs of college?
I think you have to fight for funding, and you have to fight for funding. When she decides where she wants to, I'm talking from experience. Hired for a long time. But once you identify the school she wants to go to, reach out to the financial aid office, reach out to the president's office, the provost's office. Let them know your daughter's coming. Let them know she needs funding. You let them know where you are in the funding scheme. I think you're gonna have to fight, and you're gonna have to ask. And I think the other thing folks might have to think about is, or consider, is taking a gap year, maybe she takes a year off, she does something else, and then she goes to school. I don't know, you know what I mean? But I do think, you have to ask, because sometimes the schools may have funding. But you have to really identify which school she wants to go to, or set of schools she's gonna attend, and then really explore, asking the question, do they have funding for her to attend?
I think that, sometimes the first choice may not necessarily be the first move. And I explained this to a lot of students who actually put in the work. They in many cases are A students at underperforming schools. They're intellectually motivated and excited by the opportunity of being in an environment that will nurture them. But because of the rigor at a lot of the colleges that they choose, their grades may get them in, but their ability cannot sustain the pace. So I have a heart-to-heart with a lot of students, in regards to, and one of the reasons I'm working at a community college is looking at the community college model as an opportunity for you to get to the place where you want to be, but maybe not at the moment you want to be there.
Okay, and thank you so much, Dr. Byer.
I was asked to give this award to someone that I've known for some time. And the name of the award is the Charles Wesley Tisdale Award. And it's named after the uncle of the founder, Daniel Tisdale. Just a little history on him. He was a crusader who believed that journalism was critical to activism. His motto was print the news whether it pinches or comforts. Okay? He caught a lot of flack because he founded the Mississippi Advocate. Okay, in the Jackson Advocate in Jackson, Mississippi. And some of us are old enough to remember what Nina Simone said about Mississippi.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's still true.
It's still true. So he said, and I quote, "I think newspapers that provide information are the most essential tool in a democracy." Sounds familiar, okay? And he also said, "I always wanted to have my say. This is true liberty when free men speak freely." And he bought this magazine, this periodical, to promote civil rights and fight against discrimination. So, talking to Danny about this, a few months back, he was trying to decide who he wanted to, recognize and honor somewhere around Women's History Month. And I said, well, I got somebody in mind, a good friend of mine who just retired from public service, but is an icon that I've known for some time, and I'm a pleasure to call her my friend. Years ago, when our Historical Society got started, one of our board members tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Glenn, she's the real deal, okay? So let's recognize her." And it was, 16 years ago. Needless to say, her rise to prominence has been meteoric. And I can't say, we could be here all night talking about Inez, but I think I just wanted to share that with you. And Inez, if you could please. I'll use my teacher's cafeteria voice. Harlem World, Charles Wesley Tisdale Legacy Award, presented to with honor to Inez Dickens, Harlem's iconic leader and entrepreneur, October 2025.
I don't need a mic. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I was an elected for years, so you learn to do that.
Yes.
I want to acknowledge Harlem World Magazine
Yes.
and its inception since 2005.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about Danny Tisdale
Yes, yes.
and C.C. Minton for the work that they put in, because it's very, very difficult for black media to exist,
Yes.
because we don't get the dollars, the advertising dollars
Right.
that other magazines and newspapers get.
Right.
So for them to be in existence for this length of time is just phenomenal. I got to acknowledge Boza Rivers. Boza has been the king of our cultural institutions throughout the state, in fact, throughout the country.
Yes.
He has brought in the brown children from Japan to have an exchange in Harlem so that they would understand the culture is not so different. He brought in the Bahia families from Cuba to also interact with those of us from Harlem so that they would understand how closely related we are. So Boza, thank you for all that you have done over the years to support, to foster, to ensure that black culture will never be eradicated in this country. And it's been my honor to have worked with you over the years to have provided millions of dollars to our cultural institutions. Daniel Patterson, you know, I heard Peggy talking about the community board. Well, Daniel is on the community board. He is putting his pockets, his mind, his body exactly where Peggy was talking about. Daniel, thank you. Esteemed panel. Oh my God. Peggy Shepard was talking about environmental issues, climate control, before it was sexy to do so. See, now it's sexy, but she was doing it when nobody had an interest, and she was trying to educate. I didn't have an idea what she was talking about, but I was willing to listen, I was willing to read, and it made me learn and understand the need for strong support, both financially through funding and through community activity, up to stem the tide on what is occurring across the world on the environmental issues. For Dr. Byer Tyre, you have fought hard for our cultures. I want to thank you for what you've done. I want to thank you for supporting our youth in doing it, and I'm not quite a dinosaur, but I'm I want to thank you for that. And then a special shout out to Veronica Holly. Veronica comes from an amazing family. Her dad was Ronnie Holly, who was one of the first black men to have his own business. He was a fashionista.
Yes, he was.
On 125th Street.
Yes,
and she has maintained that love and support for our community through education. So, Veronica, thank you.
Yesterday, I was interviewing an up-and-coming black architect with regard to a project I'm working on called the Black Architects of Harlem. And he showed off one of his works that is in Marcus Garvey Park. And he pointed to the Sankofa, art installation, and he said, oh yeah, Inez had a lot to do with this happening. Jerome, please just raise your hand for me, please. Okay.
And had a lot to do with the Harlem Fire Watchtower.
Yes.
So her hand is in a lot of different things. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Inez.
And Glenn is very humble because Glenn is an archivist. He is a Harlem historian. He is an author. And more importantly, he's a beloved friend and supporter. But you know, I'm grateful to stand here to accept this award. I am the granddaughter of a slave. My grandfather was born a slave. And he instilled in his sons, because he had 9 kids, 8 boys, 1 girl. And he instilled in his children the love of Black history, the love of Black people, the importance of the survival and the raising of our economic base for us to be economically empowered, politically empowered, and socially empowered. But that we must do it ourselves. And his sons taught that to their children. My sister, she's retired now, but she was a school teacher in District 5. I took the path of my father, who was elected to the New York State Assembly in the 1950s. And his younger brother, who became a Supreme Court judge, was elected to the same Central Harlem district in the 1940s. When there was a Black woman from Harlem, Bessie Buchanan, who was also in the assembly in what was Diddy Farrell's district, she could not go to the bathroom on the floor of the chambers. That was in the 40s. I know it sounds like a long time ago, but it really wasn't. And I was blessed to serve my community and honored to do so for 12 years in the New York City Council. I then went to the New York State Assembly. But while in the council, because see, the council is considered the lowest part of on the 3 levels of government. But it's in New York City, it is the most important level of government. Because in the council, that's where major funding can be done in your district, whereas you cannot do that in the state and the federal. It also is where housing is built, the ULUP process. And it also is where Peggy started with getting the laws changed to ensure that our schools and our parks would be safe for the families. So the city council is the most important. And God blessed me to have a mayor then, who was Bloomberg, and a lot of people didn't like him. I had a speaker, city council speaker, Christine Quinn. My budget averaged $100 million a year. And as such, God blessed me to be able to, where you are now in Schaumburg, that was funding that I put in. When you go outside and look at the changing I did that. Schools, you want to talk about schools, my sister? Yeah. At 197, I brought in Apple computers for all the students.
I remember that.
And built a tech center for them. Yes. I also supported 194, well, all of them, 149, 129. Exactly. I guess more than I can even think about.
That's right.
Harlem has, 6 to 8 historic parks. I was the park queen. Because I ensured that our parks were safe, that they had grass for our children to play on, that the playgrounds were built supportive for our kids, and saw to it that our parks would be open for our children and our families to enjoy for years to come. At Riverside Park, right at 12th Avenue and 125th Street, there's a set of stairs that goes from 125th Street up to Riverside Park for those who like to run, can get to it. Those stairs were just raggedy and torn down. I rebuilt those stairs, and right today you can see a plaque in the ground with my name on it, commemorating what I did for that park. So, God bless me, because you don't do anything by yourself. You do nothing by yourself. But I represented this community in the best way I possibly could. Now, did I please everybody? Absolutely not. Was I able to do everything for every single body? Absolutely not. But I try to tell people that an elected can do the very best they can do. And if they do something for your brother, sister's husband, girlfriend's mother, then they've done something for you. Right. So you work with your electeds, you do not tear them down. You work with them, you teach them. I happen to have been blessed because I could bring more housing. At the end of my tenure, I had brought more affordable income-targeted housing to this community than had been done in years. The National Urban League has 177 units of affordable housing with an AMI from 40 to 80% maximum. And they're going to be having a ribbon cutting. Well, I negotiated that deal. I brought the money from the state for that deal to occur. 177 units of affordable housing that's for our community. And there's one other thing I did that was a little different in the city council. Because I come from real estate, and a lot of my white colleagues didn't understand. They said, oh, how do you get elected and you're in real estate? I said, because you don't know my community. Exactly. And for instance, I have a tenant in one of my buildings, and when I needed a kidney transplant, and I have a odd blood, she came and donated her blood because she matched mine. A tenant did that for me. And so I've been blessed to work with him. And as a result, I also was able to negotiate for the highest number of units at the lowest AMIs without destroying the development. Because the bottom line is we need the development. So you don't destroy it. Instead, you have to understand how you can negotiate without killing it. But because I understood underwriting, I was able to do that. And the other thing is I insisted that there be a black participation in not just construction, but in management.
Yes.
And I also demanded at any of the sites that came through my office that the person that they brought in, the group that brought in, had to be from Harlem, of course, but in addition to that, they had to have a piece of the pie. In other words, they had to have a piece of ownership in that development. Now, Lincoln Correctional Facility is getting ready to be worked on. I negotiated, even though it wasn't in my district, I negotiated to ensure that a black that's from this community, the Kenny Morrison group, that they will have ownership, part ownership in Lincoln, and not just go in there and do the work and get put out. See, that's what you do so that the community can thrive and survive. Because it cannot just thrive and survive on just construction work. You have to have ownership. You have to have a stake in your community, because if you do not, you can be moved out at any time anyone wants to. So I saw to it that there was ownership in new developments in my district. I also insisted if they had commercial space or retail space, they had to give some of the space for free in perpetuity to a group I designated that was actually doing work in the community, so that they can have a home, such as Harlem Mothers Saved, so that they would have a home that they could not be moved out of and they didn't have to pay any rent. See, that's what your city council person does, or is supposed to do, in order to foster the support that our community needs. But again, I did it because I had a strong community and the backing of my community that held me up, held me down, and when I needed someone to come, like when I was fighting for the Harlem School of the Arts,
Yes.
to keep them open. They were closing them down. And I was able to bring in Mary J. Blige to help me raise money in order to see to it that that school would stay open. Now, people got mad at me because I said I'm changing the board. The board has to include the community,
Yes.
but it can't be 100% the community because they got to raise money. So I needed some people on the board that had deep pockets and or a black phone book. Now that's the reality of the thing. And so a woman came up to me when I went up there to carry a check, and she said, "Oh, I didn't see you at the meetings." And I thought about it, and I said, you know, I sent my staff to the meetings up here. I stayed downtown and raised them millions of dollars to keep this school open. I said, I don't do complaining sessions. That wasn't really what I said. And she looked at me, I thought she was gonna slap the heck out of me. But she looked at me, she said, I better not ever see you at no meeting up here. You better sit down there and get that money every time. But I want to thank each and every one of you. I want to thank my community for having given me the opportunity for 12 years in the council and for 10 in the assembly to represent a Harlem that I love dearly. I was born and raised in Harlem. I'm a child of Harlem. I've never lived anywhere else. I don't want to live anywhere else. And my community has supported me, has stood by me, has helped me. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful to you for having given me the opportunity and the honor to have served. God bless.
Hold you very long because everything that could have been said has been said. I mean, seriously. And so, again, I'd like to thank you for coming to our Summit 2025. And it has been based on ACE. What is ACE again? Arts, climate change, and education. And we've learned a lot. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Yes. So I am going to end the evening, but if anyone has anything else to say, because we're a little ahead schedule, I know we had to cut our Q&A down a little because we needed to recognize Inez. But before we get into that, I would like to recognize Harlem World Magazine. So our advisory board, if our advisory board members would stand, those of you that are still here, they actually hosted our We've been really planning for this. I'd like, again, if our panelists could stand up, and I will call you by first name. We have Peggy, David, and Veronica. And then we have our contributors here. Can our contributors stand up? Our contributors, our photographers. And then also we have Jude, who has been working with us. He's in our IT department. Thank you, Jude. So very quickly, just 5 or 10 minutes, if anyone else has a question to ask, because I know we had to, cut things short. Lil, it looks like you have something.
My question is, I'd like to know how we can light a fire under New York Parks Department to get the Hansborough Gym back open.
Yes.
Because a lot of people within our community use that gymnasium for physical fitness, including the Harlem Honeys and Bears, which is our senior citizen synchronized swimming team, who also used to teach young children how to swim. And it's something that Riverbank can't do it all.
Right.
And that's fine for the west side, but for central Harlem, Hansborough has been a part of our community, and as well as Jackie Robertson. And I just think that we need to light a fire, because Hansborough closed, I believe, in 2003.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's already been closed 2 years. And we need it in our community.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just say really quick, that sounds like that may be an Inez question.
Wait a minute now. It would have been an Inez question if I was still in the city.
Yes.
But now I can give information. It's your city council person who funds, I used to fund Hansborough.
Yes.
I'm an honorary honey and beer.
Okay.
So because I funded that. But the city council is what funds that.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's important that you go to your city council
Use that.
and put in,
Yeah.
you put in for funding. Really, you should talk to Parks because he's gonna have to deal with them.
Yes.
And so if you both go together
Okay.
and put in your proposal, because I know that the pool has been closed and they were sending us to the Bronx, they
Yes.
didn't want us.
Yes.
And I know all of that, so because I keep up with my community.
Yes, you do.
But that's where you have to start, because it's your city council that funds that, not the state or the Fed.
Yes, thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you. And one more thing, just, I don't want to leave anybody out. Our moderator, Miss Eartha Watts Hicks. And Brown. And also, I know our photographers are great. I love working with our photographers. They know exactly what they're doing. Udo and Rudy. I didn't mention your names, but I wanted to mention your names. And also Joe Green. I didn't forget you, Joe. There you go. Okay, he stepped out. So, let me see what time it is.
I have one last question.
Okay.
Because it was something Peggy had mentioned, and I wanted to, I guess maybe this is a good question to end on. Considering the current administration and funding, and each of these spaces are under attack, how do you continue to make sure the community is empowered in each of these spaces when the administration is not giving funding and things are, education department, environmental department, everything in arts is being pushed to the side?
Well, we've heard that Hansborough needs money. We've got Danny Patterson here, who's on the community board. They have a parks committee. Every community board has a parks committee. And as I said, take a bunch of students down to the parks department and have them sit there and do a town hall on what should be happening. And get some publicity, get some promotion, get some media. Those things work. And I should also say that we have to realize we're going to have a new mayor. So if you know any people in the city government right now, they may not be there in January or February. So if you know some people now, you need to be talking to them because they will not be there in a few months. And so that also means that you've got to be very vigilant about the new mayor. You've got to be very focused on what you want him to do, and you've got to make sure that he is coming to this community and that you're holding all of your elected officials responsible for pushing ahead on what you need. I mean, if Hansborough needs money, why hasn't every city council person come together and given that money? Have you done the right actions to them? And let them know that you are serious and that you don't need to vote for them again if they can't do what you need.
That's right.
Okay. So again, thank you for coming. Feel free to chat. We're here until 9 o'clock if you want to chat. And everyone safely get home. And thanks again so much for attending our summit 2025.